Hello everyone and welcome to the Smashi Business Show. Today is Tuesday, March 10, 2026 and I'm Abdul Majid Awan. And today we have some very interesting headlines. Saudi Aramco has announced $3 billion share buyback despite profit dip. I'll tell you how much profit dipped for them. Kuwait and Bahrain have declared force majeure as conflict disrupts Gulf energy supply. Gulf sovereign wealth funds could expand global influence amid crisis. That's what a situational report by GlobalSWF, the people who always tell us about the valuation of these funds, has said. We'll put light on it. Yesterday we started with markets. Oil was at a record high. It reached nearly $118 per barrel yesterday. But in the night, Mr. Trump came and gave a very confusing statement about what the next steps are in the US-Israel-Iran war, according to them, but a conflict for us because we're not involved in the war. The UAE has taken a very clear line of approach where we are saying that we're just defending against the attacks and we're not going to attack a neighboring country, Iran. But yesterday, we saw a very different market situation. On Monday, 9 March 2026, US equities, when the market opened, they fell like crazy. But then they rebounded with the S&P 500 closing at 6795.99 points, 0.8% up. The Dow opened 0.5%, closed at 0.5% up, and the Nasdaq also closed at 1.4% in the green, in the positive. Small caps also gained with the Russell going plus 1.1% up. Meanwhile, in contrast, the Gulf markets, the Tadawul market, it closed at minus 1.60. It's very interesting that the Saudi market was the only one which was ending in green in last week, but yesterday they fell minus 1.60. Qatar's stock exchange was in the negative, again in the red, minus 2.45%. Dubai's DFM is the most affected by all of this. They fell on average every day since they reopened on Wednesday after the Saturday attacks. They have been seeing a negative 2 at least every day on average. Yesterday, on Monday, it was 3.23. They've opened now again today and they're in the red. Abu Dhabi closed at 0.41%, half a point of percentage in the red, and Egypt was also in the negative 0.77%. So it shows you that when there was a problem in the US markets, everyone fled to the Gulf as a safe haven, and now they're pulling out. Also, the whole situation is affecting everyone. But the top story of the day is obviously Saudi Arabia's state energy giant, Saudi Aramco, and they've announced a $3 billion share buyback program, even as the company reported a modest decline in annual profit. The buyback, which will run for 18 months, comes as Aramco posted full-year adjusted net income of $104.7 billion, down from $110.3 billion in 2024. These are the 2025 numbers. They've reported the Q4 of 2025 and the full year 2025 numbers. The drop reflects lower global oil prices, which averaged about $69 per barrel in the last year, 2025, compared with more than $80 in 2024. Despite the earnings dip, the company continued to generate strong cash flows. Operating cash flows reached $136.2 billion, while free cash flow stood at $85.4 billion, allowing Aramco to maintain significant shareholder returns. President and CEO Amin H. Nasser said the results highlight the company's disciplined capital strategy and resilient operations during a year marked by oil price volatility. Aramco also increased its base dividend for the fourth consecutive years. Very important for all the investors in the Aramco shares. They're the biggest bellwether stock in the Saudi Tadawul market, the main market, with nearly $22 billion declared for the fourth quarter, and overall it was nearly $90 billion in dividends that Aramco gave out last year in 2025. Looking ahead, the company plans to invest $50 to $55 billion in capital spending next year, while advancing major projects including the Jafurah gas expansion, which they started with BlackRock, and it's aimed at significantly boosting Saudi Arabia's natural gas production. It would be evident to tell you here that Saudi PIF, which is a sovereign wealth fund, a $1 trillion fund, they also announced that with Aramco, both of them will now be 50-50% stakeholders in Humane, the Saudi AI company, which is which is the national champion of Saudi Arabia, to be honest, right now, like MGX in UAE, QAI, Kai, Qatar AI in Qatar. So every country, every big economy in the Middle East right now, UAE, Saudi, and Qatar have an AI champion. Aramco is now going to be a 50% part of the Saudi national AI champion. Humane, whose CEO Tariq Amin is former Digital Aramco CEO also. But all this is happening in the world of energy, but the situation remains at a force majeure position for a lot of these countries. Kuwait and Bahrain, the second story of the day, is very interesting. Kuwait and Bahrain have declared force majeure as Middle East conflict disrupts energy supply. Kuwait and Bahrain have declared a force majeure on parts of their energy operations as after the US-Israeli joint attack on the sovereign territory of Iran, and then in result, Iran retaliating with attacks on its neighboring countries, which are very unwanted, unprovoked. We're not here to fight. That's what the UAE official standpoint is. They've said that in the UN also, in the sessions that are happening right now, that we will not attack Iran, but we have the right to defend ourselves. So the conflict continues. Oil and gas flows have been disrupted. State-owned Kuwait Petroleum Corporation began cutting crude oil output on March 7 after shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, a critical waterway responsible for roughly 20% of global oil and energy supply, were blocked for the 8th consecutive day. A very interesting number I was reading yesterday. In its 80-year history since oil and gas have been started going through the Strait of Hormuz, never has there come 24 hours where oil was or gas didn't pass through that. But now, for the first time in the history of Strait of Hormuz, since oil and gas have started going through there, 8 consecutive days, no ships have passed. The company, Kuwait Petroleum Corporation, issued a trade notice declaring force majeure following reductions in crude production and refining throughput due to the conflict. Kuwait produced about 2.6 million barrels per day of crude in this February, but officials did not disclose how much output would now be reduced. Meanwhile, in Bahrain, National Energy Group, Bapco Energies, also declared force majeure after an attack struck its refinery complex, disrupting operations at one of the country's key energy facilities. The company said the declaration relates to operational disruptions caused by the regional conflict and damage to refinery infrastructure. Authorities added that contingency plans are in place to ensure domestic fuel supplies remain secure. They won't be able to export, but they will be able to supply gas, LNG, petroleum, whatever the energy products are, to the local population. So the latest disruptions follow a similar declaration by Qatar Energy earlier in the week as the widening crisis threatens energy production and exports across the Gulf. Analysts warn that if the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz continues, other major producers such as Saudi Aramco, which we just talked about, have put out their 2025 numbers, and Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, ADNOC, may also face pressure to curb output once storage capacity is exhausted. There was a very interesting graphic I recently saw in the morning, actually, on in the 74 newsletter. A very interesting newsletter if you want to subscribe. We also have a very interesting newsletter if you want to subscribe to it. The link is in bio if you're listening to it. If you're on any platform which supports links, YouTube, TikTok, the link would be in the description. But it's very interesting that the biggest storage space in terms of so like saving oil, or when you produce oil, you just don't ship it and sell it to some other country. You have to store it in places for future sales. So if I make 100 units today, I need storage space for 100 units, and they are running out of storage space. It's not the problem of not being able to create, like extract oil or convert it. It's not the problem of exporting it right now. The biggest problem right now is, if you do take out oil, where would you store it? So that's one of the biggest problems that's facing the region, and we're seeing force majeure by a lot of countries. Iraq I didn't include it in the list, but Iraq has also declared a force majeure right now. The third story of the day is somehow related to the energy environment. Gulf Sovereign Wealth Funds who are the biggest in the world right now. Mubadala, the Abu Dhabi, second largest sovereign wealth fund in Abu Dhabi, 2 years consecutive, the highest, the most active sovereign wealth fund in the world. And Saudi PIF, a $1 trillion giant, UAE's ADIA, a $1.2 to $1.3 trillion giant, Qatar's QIA, which is a $550 billion giant. All of them could emerge from the current global regional crisis with an even larger role in global finance, and that is according to a scenario by GlobalSWF. The region's oil exporters have accumulated roughly 5 trillion in surplus revenues over recent decades, and helping build some of the world's most powerful state investors, including Mubadala, Qatar, I just named all of them, PIF. GlobalSWF's baseline scenario assumes there's multiple scenarios which they've talked about. One of them is the baseline that once the Strait of Hormuz reopens, oil prices remain elevated due to geopolitical risk. So we saw oil come down to 86, 87, but because of the risk, they will stay at that point. They won't come down to the $69 that we saw recently, a very low price, and that could generate free cash flows for governments. They'll make money, allowing them to rebuild damaged infrastructure, whatever we saw, all the refineries, petroleum infrastructure, gas infrastructure that we saw damaged, and they can recover it through the oil prices and make it, and also they can replenish their defense spending. Very interesting numbers floating around, $1 million per day to defend the UAE skies, $1 billion per day to defend the GCC skies. There's a lot of numbers that are floating around, but we don't have official confirmation, but it's security analysts and security experts who say that all of this is happening. But they can use this money, the elevated oil price money, to replenish their defense spending while continuing to channel capital into obviously global investments and local investments. But the analysis also warns of a more disruptive outcome. That's the scenario they also talk about, the GlobalSWF scenario report. A prolonged disruption to shipping through the strait could strain government finances, forcing states to tap sovereign wealth funds to cover deficits. Now, if this happens, they will pull out of all their investments from locals, from international investments, and that won't be good for the investments that we made in the world or in local industries, local startups. So that's the worst case scenario, and damage to infrastructure obviously could limit Gulf producers' ability to benefit from higher oil prices. If a refinery is affected, you won't be able to make more oil or extract more oil or do anything. That way, you can't make petrol, so you can't sell petrol, and that way you won't be able to take advantage of the elevated prices. It's very interesting how the whole energy scenario in the UAE is evolving. We saw good numbers from Saudi Aramco in the start. Kuwait and Qatar and Bahrain all have announced force majeure. GlobalSWF scenario report, all three scenarios, they say there will be at least some damage. Even in the best case scenario, they will need to spend on rebuilding the infrastructure. Right now, this country where I am, Dubai, UAE, all the neighboring countries, Saudi, Riyadh, everyone is looking at two people right now, or I should say two countries. One is a US-Israel merger, and one is Iran. They're looking for a solution to this. Again, referring back to Mr. Trump's last night's statements, he said that he wants the Strait of Hormuz open. He posted on Truth Social and says if Iran continues the blockade, it won't be good for them. Meanwhile, Iran, on the other hand, their foreign minister, their prime minister, everyone is saying that they will not surrender to any demands. So how it will pan out, what will it pan out, how does it affect the businesses, the startups, which need a lot of investment from PIF, from QIA, from small VCs, from angel investors. Everyone is affected from this. That's why the Smashi Business Show is covering this from the business, from the startup angle, from investment angle, from every angle possible. Thank you so much for listening to the Smashi Business Show today. That's a wrap for today. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure to follow us across all social media channels at Smashi Business, and stay ahead with our daily newsletter. You'll find the subscription link in the description. Meanwhile, in the wake of developments in the region, we hope everyone stays safe. At this critical moment, it's essential to remain united. Follow guidance only issued by official authorities from your country. Don't listen to Auntie Jones, as you shared a video yesterday from Mr. Lewis Alsop. He is the chairman of Alsop and Alsop, real estate investment company in the UAE, based in Dubai. He said a very nice thing, and it stuck with me, that don't listen to your Auntie Jones sending messages to you from anywhere in the world. Just believe in what the government is telling you. They are here to protect you, to save you from any hazards, any problems. So yeah, this has been a Smashi Business Show, a Smashi Business production, part of the Augustus Media Podcast Network. Big shout out to our more than 2 million monthly listeners across all our platforms. We have broken through the 30,000 downloads mark also. And if you're one of them, one of the listeners, one of the watchers, we love you. You make this possible. If you're one of them, we appreciate you. Have a great day. Thank you to my production team, Kirby, as well. We will see you tomorrow on the Smashi Business Show. This is Abdul Majid Zaman. Take care.